In the heart of a ruthless winter, the landscape was transformed into a realm of unforgiving white. The scene opened with an almost surreal, panoramic view of a blizzard raging with relentless fury. Snowflakes, no larger than whispers yet countless as stars, cascaded from a sky shrouded in swirling gray clouds. The wind howled like ancient spirits, its eerie cry echoing off distant mountain ridges and through gnarled, frost-laden trees. Every gust swept away the warmth of the day, leaving behind only the cold, sterile silence of an untouched, frozen world. Amidst this wintry chaos, the camera slowly panned to a small, isolated cabin nestled on the edge of a rugged, snow-covered clearing. The cabin, modest and time-worn, stood as a solitary witness to nature's indifferent brutality. Its wooden walls, darkened by years of weather and solitude, seemed to absorb the relentless drumming of the storm. A solitary light glowed from within, a fragile beacon of human resilience, casting long, wavering shadows that danced across the icy ground. The narrative voice of Ethan, the reclusive man living in this harsh wilderness, began to speak softly, as if the storm itself compelled him to confront memories buried deep within. In the heart of this blizzard, where time itself seems frozen, every gust of wind carries whispers of a past I can neither escape nor forget, he murmured. His voice, low and reflective, resonated with the weight of years lost to isolation and sorrow. It was a voice that had witnessed both the relentless passage of time and the stark beauty of a world reborn in ice. As the storm raged on, the ambient sound of the wind was punctuated by the occasional creak and groan of the cabin's old wooden frame, as if the building itself were lamenting the loss of days gone by. Outside, the snow was so deep that it muffled the usual sounds of life, creating an overwhelming sense of stillness, a silence so profound that even the most minuscule disturbance seemed to shatter its fragile hold. It was in this vast icy solitude that the boundary between the past and the present blurred, inviting reflections on loss, memory, and the inevitable passage of time. In that moment, the world outside was both a battlefield and a sanctuary. The storm's relentless assault was a reminder of nature's raw, untamed power, while the quiet, almost meditative silence that followed its fury hinted at secrets hidden beneath layers of frost. Every detail, from the swirling eddies of snow to the faint, distant hum of the wind, wove together a tapestry of isolation and introspection, setting the stage for a journey that would unravel not just the mysteries of the frozen wilderness, but also the deep, unresolved sorrows of a man long estranged from his own life. The opening was not merely a display of nature's harshness, but a symbolic prelude to the internal tempest raging within Ethan. The storm outside mirrored the chaos of his inner world, a world where every falling snowflake was a memory, every gust of wind a lost hope, and every moment of silence a prelude to an awakening that had been waiting patiently in the depths of his soul. Inside the weathered walls of the isolated cabin, the passage of 5 long years could be felt in every creak of the wooden floor and every faded photograph that adorned the mantel. In a dimly lit room, Ethan sat by the large, frost-edged window, a cup of coffee growing cold in his grasp. The muted light of dawn revealed the fine dust of neglect that had settled over years of solitude, while outside, the remnants of the blizzard still whispered against the glass. Ethan's eyes wandered over a collection of mementos that bore silent witness to a life once filled with hope, love, and pain. There, tucked among the faded memories, lay a delicate trinket, a locket with a photograph of a smiling woman, Anna, whose absence had become the quiet ache of his existence. His voice, barely audible, filled the quiet room as he recited fragments of a memory. 5 years have passed since the accident, since I lost you, Anna. It feels like an eternity since I last heard your laugh, saw your smile, felt that warmth. His words, heavy with sorrow and resignation, merged with the soft, persistent tick of an old clock that marked time as if they were both a friend and a relentless enemy. The cabin itself, with its creaking beams and rustic charm, seemed to absorb the melancholy. Every corner held echoes of conversations long silenced, of dreams that had been quietly abandoned in the face of relentless loss. Ethan's solitude had become both a refuge and a prison, a safe haven where he could hide from a world that had once been too painful to face, and a reminder of the life he had once known, now drifting away like the snow outside. As he sipped his coffee, the bitter taste mingling with the bitterness of regret, Ethan's mind wandered to the day when everything changed. He remembered the hurried footsteps, the clamor of emergency sirens, and the chaotic blur of life in disarray. That day had marked not only the end of an era, but the beginning of his self-imposed exile, a choice to vanish into the silence of the wilderness rather than confront the fractured remains of his heart. In these quiet moments, the boundaries between past and present blurred. The once vibrant memories of a shared life with Anna became as tangible as the chill in the air. Even the gentle creaks of the cabin seemed to murmur her name, each sound a reminder of a love that had once promised forever. Yet, with each memory came a fresh wave of longing and the realization that time, however slow, continued its inexorable march forward. There, in the quiet solitude of that cold morning, Ethan faced the duality of his existence. On one hand, the world outside was harsh and unyielding, a landscape of ice and isolation. On the other, within the walls of his sanctuary, the ghosts of the past lingered, both comforting and tormenting him. It was in this delicate balance of silence and sorrow that the seeds of change were sown, setting the stage for a journey that would force him to confront the haunting echoes of what once was, and ultimately, to rediscover the path back to himself. As the relentless fury of the storm finally began to subside, Ethan reluctantly pulled on his heavy, worn coat and stepped outside, leaving the relative warmth of his cabin behind. The world he encountered was a vast, white expanse, every surface blanketed by fresh, uncompromising snow. The silence was profound, broken only by the soft crunch of his boots in the thick, undisturbed snow. With each step, he could feel the sting of icy wind and the lingering chill of the night before, as if the storm itself had left an indelible mark on the landscape. Ethan's gaze swept the horizon, where the tumultuous sky met the barren earth in a misty embrace. It was in this surreal quietude that his attention was suddenly captured by a vague, dark shape partially hidden amid the swirling drifts. At first, his mind raced with thoughts of fallen wildlife, a deer perhaps, or some other creature succumbing to the relentless cold. Yet, as he drew closer, the outline began to take on a more unsettling form. The figure lay motionless, half buried in the soft snow, its contours gradually emerging as he neared. With cautious steps, Ethan approached, his heart beginning to beat faster. He reached down to clear away a layer of snow with trembling hands, revealing the unmistakable features of a German shepherd. The animal's fur, wet and encrusted with ice, clung to its form like a shroud, rendering it almost spectral in the pale daylight. Its body, seemingly fragile under the oppressive weight of the winter, bore the hallmarks of a long and painful struggle against nature's brutal elements. Ethan knelt beside the creature, his breath fogging in the crisp air. The silence was punctuated only by the sound of his own heartbeat and the gentle rustling of snow as he carefully brushed away the frost that encased the animal's muzzle. In that moment, every detail struck him with a mix of sorrow and urgency. The slight twitch of a limb, the shallow, hesitant inhalation, a clear sign that life still clung to the battered form before him. A perplexing unease crept into his mind. He wondered how such a dog, clearly ravaged by the merciless storm, could still be holding on to life. With each careful touch, the stark reality of nature's indifference became evident, yet there was also an inexplicable tenderness in the animal's eyes, a silent plea for salvation. As he cradled the German shepherd, Ethan's thoughts churned with questions. Was this just a random twist of fate, or was there a deeper hidden message in the creature's miraculous survival? The interplay between the harshness of the winter and the fragile spark of life encapsulated in this moment resonated deeply with Ethan. It was as if the storm had not only battered the land, but also stirred something dormant within him, a long-forgotten hope, a whisper of redemption. The discovery of the dog in this desolate aftermath was no mere accident. It was a moment laden with symbolism, a turning point that promised to unravel secrets of the past and perhaps even point the way toward a future where healing was possible. In that frozen, quiet expanse, as the remnants of the storm settled and the morning light began to break through the lingering clouds, Ethan felt the stirrings of a destiny that was inexplicably intertwined with the fate of this lone survivor. The dog, shrouded in both mystery and the raw, unyielding beauty of the winter wilderness, had silently called out to him, a call that would soon draw him into a journey of profound self-discovery and reconciliation with the echoes of his own past. Ethan slowly knelt beside the shivering German shepherd, the frost on the animal's coat glinting in the soft morning light. With cautious, deliberate movements, he reached out and brushed away the brittle ice that clung to the dog's muzzle. As the frozen crystals melted under the warmth of his touch, a hint of life, a shallow, hesitant breath, emerged from the creature. His heart quickened. This wasn't a lifeless remnant of the storm. It was a being clinging to the final strands of hope. Leaning in closer, Ethan inspected the dog with an intensity born of both concern and disbelief. Amidst the disheveled fur, his fingers encountered something solid and unexpected, a collar, weathered and frostbitten, yet unmistakably crafted with care. His breath caught as he discovered a name etched into the metal: Ethan Carter. A cold shiver raced down his spine, blending the chill of the morning air with the warmth of a rekindled memory. For a long moment, he simply stared at the collar, his mind racing. How could this be? The collar bore his name, a name that belonged to him, yet the dog before him was stranger. But as he examined the delicate engraving further, another phrase emerged, half hidden by time and ice. Bring him home. The words, inscribed with a resolute urgency, resonated deep within him, stirring a cocktail of emotions that he had long kept at bay. With gentle care, Ethan lifted the dog, cradling it as if it were the most fragile piece of a lost puzzle. Every movement was filled with a quiet determination. He was not merely rescuing an animal, he was answering a silent summons from his own past. In that fleeting moment, the boundaries between his solitude and the outside world began to blur. The storm's aftermath had brought him more than a challenge. It had delivered a message, one that beckoned him to confront the life he had so desperately tried to escape. The dog's eyes, though glazed by exhaustion and the remnants of the bitter cold, held an unspoken plea, as if it recognized the familiar cadence of a forgotten promise. Ethan's hand, trembling ever so slightly, caressed the cold metal of the collar, his mind echoing with questions of fate and destiny. Was it coincidence? Or had someone, perhaps the one he had lost, arranged for this unlikely reunion? In the quiet that followed, with the early morning light gradually dispelling the remnants of night's darkness, Ethan's resolve began to form. He knew that he could not simply leave the dog to its fate. This was more than a rescue mission. It was an invitation to reawaken a part himself long shrouded in despair. With the mysterious collar and its haunting inscription as his only guide, Ethan wrapped the trembling animal in his coat and carried it back toward the cabin, every step infused with the hope of a new beginning and the promise of answers yet to be discovered. Back inside the cabin, the warmth of the fireplace wrapped around Ethan like a gentle embrace, contrasting starkly with the bitter cold outside. As he settled near the flickering flames, he carefully laid the rescued dog on a worn plaid rug. The soft crackle of the fire provided a rhythmic counterpoint to his racing thoughts. Ethan's hands, still trembling from the shock of the morning's discovery, reached instinctively for a box of old keepsakes that had long been forgotten in one of the dusty cabinets. As he sifted through faded letters, yellowed photographs, and small trinkets, one particular envelope caught his eye. Its edges were curled, and the handwriting on its front was unmistakably delicate, a script that stirred memories buried deep within him. With hesitant fingers, Ethan opened the envelope. Inside, he found a stack of papers, each page filled with heartfelt words and tender promises. The ink had faded, but the emotion behind the words burned as brightly as if it had been written yesterday. One letter, in particular, made his breath catch in his throat. It was from Anna. Her words were imbued with a warmth and hope that contrasted so sharply with the cold loneliness of his current existence. She spoke of planning for a future together, of small surprises and acts of love meant to remind him that he was never truly alone. As he read through the letter, Ethan's mind raced back to memories of a time when Anna's laughter had filled the spaces of his heart, when every day held the promise of something beautiful. In the delicate lines of her handwriting, he discovered a revelation he had long tried to forget. Anna had arranged something extraordinary for him, a companion in the form of a loyal dog named Max, who would one day find his way back to him. The letter detailed how Anna, knowing that life could sometimes be unbearably lonely, had hoped that even in her absence, her love would manifest in ways that could bridge the gap between his shattered present and a hopeful future. Every sentence resonated with a bittersweet longing, a gentle reminder of love's enduring power even after loss. Tears welled in Ethan's eyes as he traced the faded ink, the memories mingling with the present in a delicate dance of sorrow and solace. The discovery of these papers was as if Anna had reached out to him from beyond, urging him to reclaim the parts of himself he had long hidden away. The old documents, with their quiet urgency and heartfelt confessions, spoke to a promise made in happier times, a promise that he was never meant to walk alone. In that tender moment, with the sound of the fire crackling softly in the background and Max lying quietly at his feet, Ethan felt a stirring of something he had believed lost, hope. The fragments of Anna's letters, though fragile and worn by time, served as a guiding light, compelling him to confront the void within his soul and consider the possibility of healing. The mystery of Anna's thoughtful, prearranged plan began to weave itself into the tapestry of his life, suggesting that perhaps the path forward was not one of isolation, but of reconnection with her memory, with the world, and most importantly, with himself. As the firelight danced across the room, casting warm shadows on the old papers and the gentle face of the sleeping dog, Ethan realized that the past was not merely a collection of lost moments. It was a living, breathing part of him, a source of strength and inspiration that, if embraced, could lead him out of the darkness and into a future filled with the promise of renewal. Emerging from the sanctuary of his cabin with Max cradled under a warm blanket, Ethan stepped back into a world that was both familiar and changed by time. The morning light, still gentle after the fierce winter night, painted the snow in soft hues of pink and gray as he made his way down the narrow, winding road toward town. Each step felt heavy with memories, and every crunch of snow under his boots echoed the silent call of a past he had long tried to escape. As he approached the outskirts of town, the landscape shifted from the desolation of the wilderness to the modest bustle of a small community that still held remnants of his earlier life. In the distance, a modest general store came into view, a place where neighbors once greeted him with warm smiles and knowing nods. The sight stirred a mix of nostalgia and apprehension within him. At the door of the store, Ethan hesitated for a moment, his heart beating in sync with the crunch of snow. With Max still quietly loyal by his side, he pushed open the door, and the soft chime of a bell announced his arrival. Inside, the warmth was immediate, a stark contrast to the biting cold he had just left behind. The scent of fresh coffee mingled with the faint aroma of baked goods, wrapping him in a comforting familiarity. Behind the counter stood Henry, a longtime friend whose weathered face wore a gentle smile of cautious welcome. "Well, if it isn't Ethan Carter," Henry said, his voice a mixture of surprise and quiet affection. "I thought you had vanished for good." His eyes, kind yet reflective, quickly moved to Max resting near Ethan's feet. "And who might this be?" he asked, tilting his head in that familiar, curious manner. Ethan cleared his throat, his voice slightly rough from disuse. "Ah, I found him out there in the storm. The dog. I believe he's been waiting for me." He gently patted Max, who responded with a soft, reassuring wag of his tail. Henry's smile deepened, and he leaned forward as if to share a secret. "We kept him safe for you," he explained. "After Anna's adoption papers came through, we all knew you'd eventually come back. Max wasn't just a stray. He was a message, a reminder that you're not meant to be alone." At that moment, Tom, the store owner known for his sharp wit and even sharper memory, stepped forward from behind a stack of crates. "I never thought I'd see you walk through these doors again, Ethan," Tom remarked, his tone a blend of teasing and genuine concern. "You disappeared without a trace, leaving behind more questions than answers. But it seems fate had a way of bringing you back, one way or another." The conversation swirled around Ethan like a warm current, gradually easing the tension he had carried for years. As they talked, familiar faces emerged from the crowd, neighbors and friends who had watched his absence with quiet sorrow and hope. Each greeting, each nod, reminded him that the town had held on to his memory, that the fragments of his past were still interwoven with the fabric of the community. Between sips of hot coffee and shared anecdotes, Ethan found himself slowly peeling away the layers of isolation. Henry recalled how, shortly after Anna's departure, the townspeople had rallied together, ensuring that Max was cared for, even as they waited for his master's return. Tom chimed in with stories of small miracles, the way Max would appear at the door on foggy mornings, as if guided by an unspoken promise. In this small, heartfelt reunion, Ethan realized that every conversation, every warm smile, was a piece of the puzzle he had long neglected. The community wasn't just a collection of people. It was a living tapestry of shared history, of collective hope that he was still a part of their world. Here, among those who remembered him, he found solace in knowing that he had never truly been forgotten. As the morning gave way to a brighter day, Ethan stepped back outside the store with Max at his side, the weight of the past feeling a little lighter. The crisp air carried with it a promise of renewal. Each friendly word, each familiar face, was a reminder that the journey back to himself was well underway, nurtured by the enduring bonds of community and the silent, steadfast companionship of a dog who had never lost faith in him. Ethan's steps led him to the old church on the outskirts of town, a place he hadn't visited in years. The building stood silent and solemn, its once vibrant stained glass now dulled by time and dust, yet still radiating a quiet majesty that beckoned him inside. The heavy wooden doors creaked open as if welcoming him back into a long-forgotten sanctuary. Stepping into the cool interior, he was greeted by an overwhelming sense of stillness, punctuated only by the faint echo of his footsteps on worn stone floors. Inside, shafts of light streamed through the high windows, casting kaleidoscopic patterns across the pews and the altar. The air was thick with the scent of old wood and candle wax, evoking memories of prayers whispered in earnest and hope kindled in quiet moments of despair. Ethan's heart pounded as he slowly made his way to the front, each step stirring a cascade of emotions that he had long suppressed. It felt as though the church was a repository of every lost promise and every unspoken plea for redemption. He found a pew near the front and sank down, the cool wood beneath him a stark reminder of the countless souls who had sought solace in this sacred space. As he sat, memories of a time when his faith had burned bright came rushing back, flashbacks of community gatherings, soft hymns sung in unison, and the tender embrace of shared belief. Now, the church offered him a silent invitation to reclaim that part of himself he had long abandoned. In the quiet, broken only by the distant sound of the wind outside and the rhythmic ticking of an ancient clock, Ethan closed his eyes and allowed his mind to wander through the corridors of memory. He recalled the gentle voice of a pastor who had once reminded him that even in the deepest darkness, a spark of light always remained. The recollection was bittersweet. It was a reminder of what he had lost, yet also a beacon of what might still be recovered. With trembling hands, Ethan reached out to touch a small wooden cross hanging on the wall, relic that had witnessed countless prayers over generations. The cross, worn smooth by time, resonated with his touch, and in that silent communion, he felt a subtle warmth emanate from within. It was as if the very spirit of the church, imbued with the prayers and hopes of so many before him, was reaching out to guide him back to a place of inner peace. Soft whispers of a hymn, barely audible in the vast emptiness, seemed to rise from the depths of the sanctuary. Ethan's eyes fluttered open, and for a moment, he imagined seeing Anna's face among the shadows, a tender, reassuring smile that urged him forward. Though she was gone, her memory, like the light of the stained glass, still colored his world with hues of compassion and resilience. Sitting there, enveloped by the sacred atmosphere, Ethan allowed himself to believe once more in the possibility of healing. He realized that this place was not just a relic of the past, but a living testament to renewal, a space where broken hearts could mend and lost souls could find their way home. The church, with its quiet dignity and enduring presence, was offering him a chance to reclaim the faith that had been buried beneath years of isolation and sorrow. In that profound silence, Ethan whispered a prayer, a tentative, heartfelt plea for guidance, forgiveness, and the strength to move forward. It was a moment of surrender, a soft acceptance of the fact that even in the midst of despair, hope could be reborn. The echoes of his prayer mingled with the timeless whispers of the sanctuary, setting the stage for a new chapter in his life, a journey not just of survival, but of rediscovery, compassion, and a faith that was slowly, inexorably being restored. As the soft glow of morning faded into a crisp new day, Ethan found himself stepping into a world that was both familiar and entirely transformed. With Max faithfully by his side, he left behind the quiet refuge of his cabin, ready to embrace a life that had once seemed irretrievably lost. The winding road to town was now bathed in gentle light, and every step forward felt like a tentative return to the rhythm of community and belonging. Ethan's first destination was the local animal shelter, a modest building that had always served as a haven for creatures cast aside by fate. The shelter was bustling with quiet activity, a sanctuary of compassion where the wounded and forgotten were given care and a chance at new beginnings. Inside, the air was filled with soft barks, the rustle of food being prepared, and the gentle murmurs of volunteers sharing stories of resilience. It was in this nurturing space that Ethan found the first tangible sign that his own healing journey was about to begin. Henry, the kind-hearted man who had long managed the shelter, greeted him with a warm smile and a firm handshake. "Ethan, it's good to see you back," Henry said, his voice rich with both relief and cautious optimism. "We've missed you here, and so have these souls." The animals, sensing the warmth in his tone, perked up as if they too recognized the presence of someone who could heal their silent scars. As days turned into weeks, Ethan found himself immersed in the routines of shelter life. He helped prepare meals, bathed the animals with gentle care, and took long walks around the grounds, offering quiet words of comfort to the timid and the troubled. Each day was a lesson in empathy and the quiet power of healing, a process of mending not just broken bodies, but shattered spirits. Max, ever the steadfast companion, was at his side throughout, a living reminder of the unyielding bond that had drawn Ethan back from the brink of despair. In the course of these days, the rhythmic hum of shelter life began to fill the void that isolation had left behind. Conversations with fellow volunteers slowly unraveled the tangled threads of his loneliness. He discovered that many of these lost souls, both human and animal, shared the same story of abandonment and yearning for a second chance. Their stories interwove with his, forming a tapestry of shared experience and quiet resilience that was as fragile as it was beautiful. Every evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and cast long shadows across the shelter's courtyard, Ethan would reflect on the day's simple victories, the gentle nudge of a head resting against his hand, the soft, approving wag of Max's tail, the heartfelt thank you from a volunteer whose eyes shone with gratitude. These moments, though small, began to stitch together a sense of purpose that had long been missing from his life. It was as if the shelter, with its endless stream of compassion and second chances, had become the crucible in which his own redemption was being forged. Slowly, the rigid armor of solitude and sorrow began to crack, revealing a tender openness that Ethan had once believed was lost forever. He started to share his story, quietly at first, then with growing confidence, discovering that vulnerability was not a sign of weakness but a doorway to genuine connection. In turn, the community of the shelter offered their stories of hope, each narrative reinforcing the belief that even the most wounded heart could learn to love again. By the time the chill of winter had given way to the gentle promise of spring, Ethan found that the transformation within him was palpable. The days spent caring for the abandoned creatures had rekindled his own capacity for compassion, allowing him to see that healing was a shared journey. And in the mirror of their resilience, he recognized the strength he had thought was long buried beneath the weight of his grief. In this renewed chapter of his life, every act of care, whether tending to a stray animal or offering a kind word to a fellow volunteer, became an affirmation that life, despite its scars, was full of endless possibilities. The animal shelter was no longer just a place of refuge. It had become the foundation upon which Ethan began to rebuild his life, one day, one gentle moment at a time. The long winter began to loosen its grip. The early light of dawn painted the world in soft pastels, signaling not just the end of night but the promise of a new day. With Max by his side, Ethan drove along a winding road that led back to the cabin, a place that had once symbolized his isolation, but which now beckoned him as a repository of memories and the birthplace of his renewal. The landscape outside was transformed. The heavy, oppressive snow was giving way to fresh patches of green and hints of wildflowers daring to peek through the thawing earth, much like the tentative stirrings of hope within him. On this journey home, every mile seemed to dissolve the long-held weight of grief and regret. Ethan's thoughts drifted between the faces of those who had welcomed him back, a community that had never truly forgotten him, and the quiet resilience of Max, whose unwavering loyalty had been the silent guide on his path to recovery. The rhythmic hum of the old pickup truck became a meditative backdrop, each turn of the wheel a reminder that life was moving forward, gently urging him to leave the past behind. Upon arriving at the cabin, Ethan stepped out into the crisp morning air, feeling the cool breeze caress his face with a softness that belied the harsh winters of his past. The cabin, now bathed in the tender glow of sunrise, seemed to welcome him like an old friend reuniting after a long separation. Its weathered exterior and familiar contours evoked a bittersweet nostalgia, a testament to both the solitude he had endured and the quiet strength he had rediscovered. Inside, the cabin retained its rustic charm, yet everything felt different, imbued with a new energy that resonated with promise. Ethan carefully placed Max on a cozy rug near the fireplace, the dog's tired eyes meeting his with a knowing warmth. As he moved about the room, small details caught his attention, a window left open to invite in the gentle breeze, a stack of well-read books on the shelf, and even the subtle aroma of pine that lingered in the air, each element a silent nod to the life he was beginning to rebuild. Ethan retrieved the collar from his pocket, its engraved name and the message "Bring him home," now a symbol of his own return and transformation. Holding the collar up to the morning light, he spoke softly, as if conversing with the past and the future all at once. "You never gave up on me, and neither will I give up on this life." His voice, once burdened with sorrow, now resonated with a quiet determination. In that moment, he recognized that home was not merely a physical place, but a state of being, a confluence of memories, present joys, and the potential for new beginnings. With renewed resolve, Ethan decided to step beyond the familiar walls of the cabin. He gathered a few essentials, donned his weathered coat, and opened the door to the fresh, inviting world outside. Max padded at his heels, and together they set off towards the town, where familiar faces waited with open arms. The crisp air was filled with the sounds of life, a distant conversation, the laughter of children, and the gentle rhythm of a community waking to a new day. Each step on the snowy path was imbued with symbolism. It was a journey of both physical and emotional distance, from the barren isolation of past winters to the warm embrace of community and shared hope. As Ethan walked, memories of the days spent in solitude mingled with a vibrant anticipation of reuniting with those he had once known. The once oppressive silence was now replaced by a gentle symphony of nature and the soft murmurs of a world that had continued to live, love, and hope in his absence. Reaching the heart of the town, Ethan paused for a moment in front of the small community center, a place that had been the cornerstone of support during his darkest times. He took a deep breath and allowed himself a quiet smile, recognizing that the journey of healing was far from over, but was a journey he no longer had to take alone. In that instant, he felt a profound connection not only to the people around him but also to the memory of Anna, whose gentle guidance had set these events in motion, and to the faithful presence of Max, whose unwavering companionship had been the catalyst for his return. Standing at the threshold of a new beginning, Ethan whispered a silent promise to himself and to the life he was reclaiming, that he would cherish every moment, embrace every challenge with courage, and never again allow the shadows of the past to keep him from the radiant promise of tomorrow. With Max by his side and the community welcoming him back, he stepped forward into the light of a brand new day, a day filled with hope, love, and the infinite possibilities of home. The Frozen German Shepherd, A Journey of Rediscovery, is more than just a story of survival. It's also a testament to the enduring power of hope, love, and loyalty. Through Ethan's journey, we learn that even in our darkest moments, there is always a light waiting to guide us home, and that sometimes the unexpected can lead us to our true selves. If this story touches your heart, please consider supporting our channel. Please like, share, and subscribe so we can continue to bring you more inspiring and meaningful stories. Thank you for joining us on our journey.